Hey everyone, here it is. It's Sunday again. Another Sunday, another glorious day. Last week, our story was about Abraham and Sarah and how they had a child very late in life. Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 years old when they had their first and their only child. Now, God told Abraham that he would have as many descendants as the number of stars in the sky. But he only had one child, a son. And they named him Isaac. Now, Isaac grew up to be a wonderful young man for Sarah and Abraham. And there's a lot of stories about Abraham and Isaac. But we're going to go to when Isaac is older. A little bit older, about 40 years older. And it's time for Isaac to find a wife. But Abraham knows that there's a certain special someone for Isaac. And so Abraham instructs one of his servants to go back to their original homeland. Do you remember the story about whenever Abraham and Sarah traveled to different cities and they didn't know if God was there? And then each time they built an altar to show that God was there in that place. And they were just so amazed. Hey, God's here, God's here, God's over here, God's over here, God's over here. And they kept building altars to praise and worship God and let everybody know that God was in that place. Well, Abraham said, I want you to have, he told the servant, I want you to go back to my original homeland and I want you to find the wife for Isaac there. That's where his wife will be. So the servant goes to the well and prays to God and says, God, help me to know which woman is to be his wife. Now, he's never met anybody there. He knows nobody at all. But he goes to the well and he sits down and he prays to God and he says to God, now, I'm going to know that this person's the wife somehow. I gotta have some way of knowing that this girl is the right one. So he prays to God and says, tell you what, can you do it this way? How about I ask for water, and if the girl says yes, go ahead and drink, and then she gives water to my camels as well. So along comes this beautiful girl, and the servant says to her, I'm really thirsty. Can you get me a drink? And she's like, sure. So she gets him water, and as he's drinking, she says, are those your camels over there? Are your camels thirsty? I can get water for your camels too. So she gets water for the camels. The servant is like, I just prayed this. I literally just prayed this, and already God is answering the prayer. So he says, is there any way that I can come with you and stay at your place? Like, I have nowhere to stay. Can I come stay at your place? And she says, yeah, my family's huge. We got all kinds of places you can stay. There's plenty of straw and all kinds of stuff. There's plenty of food. Come on back. So Rebecca leads the servant back to her home, and they encounter Rebecca's brother. His name is Laban. Now, Rebecca's brother comes running out like, who are you and what are you doing with my sister? But he realizes something special is going on. When she explains everything that just happened, he knows that this is a message from God. So he goes out and he invites the servant to come in and eat with them and to stay with them. And sure enough, the next day they load Rebecca up on a camel, and they ask her, they said, are you willing to go back, and are you willing to leave the country? Are you willing to do all this to go marry this guy that you've never met? And she says yes. So they load her up and they head back. And all of a sudden, there's Isaac. Isaac. And he sees this group coming on camels. And Rebecca says, "Do you know who that is? Who is that guy?" And the servant says, "That's Isaac." Immediately, Rebecca covers her face. And she gets down off the camel, and the servant introduces them. And it was love at first sight. They become husband and wife. Now, the story doesn't end there. Rebecca can't get pregnant. She's not having any luck getting pregnant. And so Isaac prays to God that his wife Rebecca would have a child. Sure enough, she gets pregnant, but not with one baby, with two. She's pregnant with twins. And towards the end of the pregnancy, Rebecca starts noticing that things are going on inside of her. She says it feels like the babies are fighting each other, and she prays to God and says, "What's going on in there?" And God tells her, there are two nations at war inside of you. And the older will serve the younger. Well, the time came for Rebecca to give birth to the babies. And the oldest came out covered in red hair. He was hairy from head to toe. And then the other came out not covered in hair. And we don't even know what color of hair he has. But in the Bible, it talks all about the oldest hair being red and that he was covered in hair. And they named the oldest one Esau. And the youngest one they named Jacob. Now Jacob came out holding on to his brother's heel. He was holding on. So the babies came out, whoosh, whoosh, a red hairy one and another one hanging on. God planned everything to happen just the way it did. Two babies for Isaac and Rebecca. And next week, we're going to hear about Esau and Jacob. Let's find out a little bit more about those two. Kind of an interesting story about Jacob and Esau. You guys have a great week, and I love you very much. Bye.